On a hot afternoon in Charleston, West Virginia, July 18, 2015, shattered peace echoed down 6th Street. The unsettling sound of a woman's desperate screams jolted a sleepy neighborhood awake. Drawn by the commotion, a resident stepped outside to find a woman pacing erratically, her face pale and her hands trembling. It was Heather Saul. Her clothes were blood-streaked, her skin dotted with fresh cuts. In a breathless, broken voice, she revealed she'd just killed a man who'd tried to kill her. The resident dialed 911 with trembling fingers, relaying Heather's injuries and state of shock. Minutes later, police swarmed the scene. Heather, still trembling from the ordeal, explained her story to the officers. She was a sex worker, she said, and had been contacted online by a man named Neil Falls. What should have been a routine meeting quickly morphed into a nightmare. Heather was alone in her small apartment when Neil Falls arrived. From the moment he stepped through the door, his demeanor was chilling. His eyes gleamed with a sinister intent, and within seconds, he pressed a cold gun to her stomach. "Live or die," he whispered, the words an unmistakable promise of violence. In that instant, Heather's instincts kicked in. She had faced rough men before, but something in his stare told her this was different, much worse. As she pleaded for her life, Falls tightened his grip around her throat. Her vision blurred, each breath harder to pull. Falls dragged her through the house, his hands rough and unrelenting. But Heather's survival instinct was fierce. Spotting a rake in the kitchen, she lunged for it, managing to strike Falls, momentarily loosening his grip. With a strength born of desperation, she reached for his gun. She barely felt her finger pull the trigger, but the sound of the gunshot echoed, marking the end of her attacker. The officers investigating the scene were left speechless by the contents of Falls' car. Inside, they found an arsenal of horrific tools: axes, a machete, handcuffs, a shovel, bleach, a bulletproof vest. But it was the small yellow post-it note that chilled them the most. A list of names and contact information for other sex workers. The discovery was damning. It seemed Neil Falls had a hidden bloody past. Realizing the gravity of what they'd uncovered, Charleston detectives contacted the FBI. LT Steve Cooper commented, "We're submitting this case to a national database. We need to know how far his darkness spread." The FBI quickly flagged Falls as a potential suspect in a series of cold cases across the country. Digging into his past, detectives pieced together a portrait of a man marked by violence. Born in Eugene, Oregon, the youngest of 10, Falls was no stranger to hardship and dysfunction. He drifted through life, working various jobs, including a stint as a private security guard at the Hoover Dam. But everywhere he went, there were whispers, stories of erratic behavior, cruelty to animals, and an obsession with sex workers. In 2008, he was dismissed from his job due to allegations of sexual harassment. After that, he lived a transient life, drifting between states, slipping in and out of towns with little more than a trace. But in his wake, he left something darker: bodies, evidence of horrors that remained unexplained, unfinished. The FBI's investigation linked Falls to unsolved murders of sex workers in Las Vegas between 2003 and 2007, when he had been living nearby. In Chillicothe, Ohio, where Falls had briefly resided, the disappearances of local women ceased after his death, adding weight to the theory that he was the predator who'd been stalking vulnerable women. Among the suspected victims were Misty Murray Sains, Jody Brewer, and Lindsay Harris, all women whose remains were discovered in tragic, brutal circumstances. Then there was the mysterious I-70 killer, whose path of carnage stretched along the Midwest Interstate in the early 90s. Though no physical evidence has definitively tied Falls to these murders, he had been living near Kansas, where one of the murders took place. The implications were unnerving. Had Heather stopped a monster whose reach extended across decades and state lines? Though Neil Falls' rampage ended in Heather's apartment, the scars of his crimes continue to haunt law enforcement. Heather was cleared of any charges, her act of self-defense deemed justified. But her story stands as a chilling reminder, a glimpse into the horror hidden behind a stranger's smile. Even in death, Falls' secrets remain buried, shrouded in shadow. The lives he touched, twisted, or claimed may never see justice. But Heather's courage has shone a light on one of the darkest chapters, giving voice to those who were lost along the way.